All right, so I'll just kind of run back really quickly. And remind you of the things going on today. Quiz, chapters we're covering, things that are due coming up. Don't forget to sign up for concurrent support classes because they're 2 points extra credit. And then there's some great resources like the ebook. And then if you click on resources, there's also videos you can watch, which are great. Yeah?
The class that you talked about with the 2 points extra credit?
Yeah.
Does that get substituted with the smart shops? Or does that get
No.
with the
That gets substituted with tutoring. You can't do that and tutoring. So you can do smart shops, and you can do smart shops are their own thing. It's just the concurrent support is very similar in many ways to tutoring, so you can't double count those. You can do tutoring or that. Tutoring is 1 point. So everything else is 1 point. Tutoring is 1 point. Smart shops are 1 point. You can earn per exam. The concurrent support you can earn 2 points per exam.
You need 2 smart shops to get the 1 point, right?
Each smart shop is worth half a point. And you can only do 1. If you happen to do 3 smart shops, just save 1 for the next exam. You can do that. But I only allow 1 per exam. 1 point per exam. Thank you. Videos. This is the quiz problem. Here are the answers for those of you at home. We already went over them in class. So take a look. Pause your video now if you want to look at it because I'm moving on. And histograms, which we talked about a second, and we're going to talk about that more in just a minute. So histograms, heights are your frequencies, and then your temperature or ages or whatever you're talking about is down below. All right, so Noe, go ahead and read.
Relative frequency graphs. If proportions are used instead of frequencies, the graphs are called relative frequency graphs. Relative frequency graphs are used when the proportion of the data values that fall into a given class is more important than the actual number of the data values that fall into that class.
Right, and we're concerned about the percentages in each class versus the actual hard numbers. Okay, so your quiz problem number 2, was making a relative frequency histogram for the continuous data. So you've made your little graph like that, right? And did you guys use boundaries? I think I asked you guys to use boundaries, right? So you started off with, was it 14.5 or 19.5? 14.5? So these are all of your boundaries. How far does it go? One more? Am I done now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, and then the highest frequency you had was like maybe 9? Yes?
0.5.
7 was the highest you had? Okay, good, I can stop there. Okay, good. So the one thing I would say, oh, you're right. These are decimals. So the highest you had was
0.5.
0.5 was the highest you had?
No, 0.35.
0.35. So 0.25 could be right here. 0.35. 0.10. Okay, we'll do it like that. So first, let me tell you what not to do. The one thing you should not do. The first class has a frequency of what? 4? So it had a relative frequency of 0.2, yes? So don't do this. This would be the one thing that you could lose points on, and some people did. Is they did it, here's 0.2, and they center it above this. It's not centered at 14.5. It starts at 14.5 and goes to 19.5. So everyone, you know what I mean? This is the beginning of the class. This is the end of the class. So it should be between this and this, not centered over here. Does everybody see the difference? Not if you do, shake your head if you don't, or give me some sort of, okay. Thank you. So don't do that. Instead, it should start at this spot and end at that spot. Should be larger. So then it's like this. The next one is 7. 35%, 0.35. And then what's the next one?
0.25.
0.25. And then, what's after that?
0.15.
I'm sorry?
0.15.
1.5. And a couple of zeros, and the last one is
0.05.
0.05, just like that. So your histogram should look something like that, more or less. Good so far? Great. Frequency polygons. I did not talk about them very much last class. I kind of skated over them because I thought that I wouldn't cover them at all, but then I realized that I have some homework problems on there, so I should cover them at least a little bit so that you can do the homework problems you have, because you have 3 homework problems on them. So here's the deal with those. Remember, they're very similar to histograms. If I were to draw a histogram here, it would look like this, and go right through all these little points right here. So it's basically just taking the midpoints of every class and the same frequency, right? So you just go with whatever the frequency is at the midpoint and just make a dot there. And here's the next frequency, find the midpoint and make a dot there, and then you draw a line connecting them. That's essentially they're essentially the same graph. They show the exact same information. Just one's in a bar graph form and one's in a line form. And there's also relative frequency polygons, which are the same, only they have the relative frequencies over here. And we talked about that last class. Remember I showed how, like, if you look at here, the only thing that changes is the frequency numbers over here from numbers to decimals. So there's really no difference between them except for that. So how do you create one? You find all the midpoints of your class. How do you find the midpoint of a class? You average your upper and lower limits of that class. You find the number smack dab in the center. Right? So you average the 2 ends. And then you just take the frequency and you make a dot. You put in a point at wherever that frequency is. I'll show you what I mean by looking at this one down here. I'll look at some data here. So if I were to make one here, the midpoint of this class is 6 to 10. This class is 11 to 15. This class is 16 to 20. This class is 21 to 25. So the midpoints, so this is the miles. This is the midpoints. What's the midpoint of a class from 6 to 8? What's the middle? 8. Sorry, from 6 to 10 is 8. What's the midpoint from 11 to 15? 13, right? So if someone has $11, someone else has $15, and you kind of average their money, they each have $13. So you see what I'm saying? Okay. So these are the midpoints. They are 8, 13, 18. Oh, look, I can just add class width. And I'm going to take these frequencies. So I'm going to oops, ignore that part there. I'm going to make a frequency polygon. So it's going to be here. My midpoints are going to be 8, 13, 18, 23, 28, 33, 4, 38, and okay, so that's good. Let's put that, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 28, 33, and 38. All right. So then I'm going to go above these. Let's see. Let's mark out my frequencies. I need to go as high as 5. My first one is My midpoint's 8. What's the frequency for it? 1. Everybody see that? Yes? So I can put a dot there. Next one has a midpoint of 13, frequency of 2, dot there. 18, frequency of 3, dot there. 23 has a frequency of 5, dot there. Next one, 28 has a frequency of 4, and then 3, and then 2. Okay, good. And then we're going to draw a line between them. Oops. I'm going to draw a little thinner line than that. Now, see how it's all sticking up in the air like that? We don't want that. So what do we call it? We call it anchoring. We make a class before it and after it. We give it 2 extra classes. So what's the class? What will be the class above this? It would be from 1 to 5. What's the frequency of the class? How many people ran 1 to 5 miles?
0.
0. None of them. Does that make sense? There's nobody in that class. How many people ran 1 million to 1,000,005 miles? Nobody. All the rest of these are all zeros. Everyone kind of see that? So I can create extra classes if I wanted to. They'd have frequencies of 0. So mostly pointless, but we use them for this. What would be the midpoint of that class? 4. Wait, 3. 3. My bad. And I can make a class after it. So that would be 41 to 45. It would also have 0 in it. And the midpoint of, 38 plus 5, 43. I just added a class with it. So now I've made 2 extra classes, one at the end at 43, one at the beginning at 3. And then I can finish this thing out so it's what we call anchored. So this is called anchoring it at the end or the beginning. Good? All right, so I need you guys to turn to your quiz problem 4. We're not going to do 4, but 5. So we're done with the quiz. Excuse me. Totally done with the quiz. Now we're going back to our chapter 2 notes from last class. So get out your chapter 2 notes from last class. Does anybody need an extra copy of them? I have an extra copy if anybody needs one. Chapter 2 notes. Anybody need these? Chapter 2 notes? Yes. What problem is this? I just made this up, right? Because I realized like 15 minutes into my last class that I should show you an example of a frequency polygon. I didn't have one. I had some already done, but I didn't have one where I made one. And I realized that I should show you how to make one. So it was really a disaster there because I was trying to do it on the fly and it was kind of a total mess. Which is why you shouldn't go to the afternoon class because that's my first time. So I do all my mistakes there. So I just made that one up. What I want you guys to do is, is go to your 4th page. At the bottom of the 4th page, it says lab problem 4 at the bottom down here. We're not going to do lab problem 4 or lab problem 5. What we're going to do is you're going to do a frequency polygon in that space for your quiz problem. So the quiz problem you guys just did, you're going to make a frequency polygon, which means you need to find the midpoints for all those classes, right? Find all the midpoints for them. You can write that in on your quiz if you like. And then create a frequency polygon. Just not a relative frequency, just a regular frequency. Just use the numbers. It's fine.